Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 230 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic. Kevin, joined by my longtime co-host now at ESPN, Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson, joining as a guest. Always love to get Eric on when he's got the availability, and tonight was a good time to do so as we get into the front seven of free agency. Eric, I know you're a big fan of the front seven and prioritizing that area of the team, so I figured you'd be the perfect guy to bring on. But before we get into that, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well, man. And, you know, if you're a Falcons fan, you should also be a fan of the front seven, since this team hasn't had much of a front seven in recent years. So we should all be aware of what that can do.
Aware, what yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's definitely unique as opposed to the last 2 years where the Falcons are basically working with scraps, that they do have a lot of money to throw around, so we can actually talk about the premium names, whereas in years past it was like, well, we can ignore the top 5 guys on the list because there's no way they could afford them. But now we can talk about pretty much every free agent, and obviously they're not going to be interested in every single one of these players, but they might be interested in a couple of them. And they'll probably, knowing Terry Fontenot and how he's bargain shopped, I don't think he's going to completely abandon that strategy. I do believe Fontenot's going to continue to go try to get those bargain guys as well, but they can open up the checkbook a little bit more if they have premium players they want to add.
Right. Yeah. I think you're still going to get the efficient spending from Fontenot. You're just going to get it with bigger contracts, basically, is how I'm looking at it. I don't see him as a guy that's just going to, throw money away unless they really covet a certain player. So yeah, I still think they're going to be wise with their money this offseason.
Yeah. I agree. And before we dive in, guys, want to remind you of the usual stuff, right? Like and subscribe if you're watching live with us on YouTube. Those metrics really help us out. If you're listening to the podcast audio, leave us that 5-star review. And if you're interested in supporting the show, you can hit up the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Or if you're interested in asking a question, you can do that at the link in the show description, streamlabs.com/thefalcoholic/tip. And we will be happy to answer any and all questions. They don't necessarily have to be Falcons related. If it would help if they are, so we can keep the show flowing in one direction. But that's up to you. If you want to create chaos, I guess that's on you. But we do appreciate all that support, guys. Thank you so much for that. Now we don't have advertisers, so I just advertise us. So now that quick ad read is out of the way, we can get to the actual content here. It's very efficient ad read, and it's nice that we're just pimping our own stuff. But let's get started with the position that seems to be at the forefront of everyone's minds, and that's edge. That edge has probably been the weakest position on the roster for as long as I can remember. Going back to, there was a brief moment, I think 2016, when they had Dwight Freeney in here and Vic Beasley decided to have his one good season, and they actually had a pretty good rotation going in 2016 and 2017. But other than that, it's been a steady downhill slide for the edge group. The Falcons don't have much under contract. They do have a few pretty intriguing young players, right? They have Arnold Ebiketie, they have D'Angelo Malone, who didn't play a ton, but definitely has some potential. And then they've got guys like Ade Ogundiji, who had sort of a down year, but the team seems to like him. They gave him almost 50% of the snaps. Quentin Bell was re-signed to a futures contract. And then David Aneni, friend of the show, David Aneni, who we interviewed in the offseason, ended up finally getting to the Falcons. So that we did actually, the interest that they showed pre-draft ended up being correct. They just didn't get him in the draft, but he is here. He's a guy that I like as a potential developmental guy. But as you can see, pretty slim pickings here. We're definitely going to need an infusion of talent somewhere. Lorenzo Carter is a pending free agent. I know a lot of fans want to bring him back, but with the new coordinator coming in, not really sure if that's the route they're going to go at edge. That, Carter was perfect for like a Dean Pease defense, right? Where he kind of does a little bit of everything, and I still think he could have a role here. But what do you think about the depth that the Falcons currently have and how big of a priority is adding to the edge group in free agency?
Well, the one thing that we've seen from New Orleans and the Saints is that they've, throughout the years, they've always had solid depth. Like that was, I don't think that's ever really been an issue for them. Even with Nielsen as the D-line coach. So I think it may be a situation where he covets or he sees the value that a guy like Lorenzo Carter brings and will want to bring him back. I think that the guy played his butt off this year.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a starter role, but I definitely feel like he brings plenty of value as just a rotational guy going forward. And he's still young. He's only what, 26, 27, maybe?
27,
like that?
Yeah, just turned 27 in December. So he played like 90-something% of the snaps, which is absurd for a defensive end. He was an outside linebacker technically, but for an edge player to play that many snaps is really impressive.
Right. So he was always, he didn't have the greatest sack numbers in the world, but he was solid in run defense. And he made some plays. You go back to that Carolina game, that pick six right before the half, that he read the screen perfectly and got into the path of the throw. Those are things that you will want even on a rotational basis. That and the special teams value that he brings as well. He was the guy that returned the block punt against the Rams. He took that back to the house to lead a comeback or help steer a comeback for the Falcons on the road against the Rams. So yeah, I think Carter should be back, but we'll see going forward as far as a whole what they have. You pointed out they have plenty of youth in Ebiketie and Malone, who I think with more development both can truly be solid pieces going forward. Ogadeji, the inconsistencies were prevalent this year, and I think you saw that towards the end of the year where he started losing snaps to Malone. But again, we'll see what they do depth wise with that. Because he also brings special teams value as well in that aspect. But I'm pretty sure you feel the same way. But even with Ebiketie and Malone, two young guys that you can use going forward, there's still a need for that veteran edge rusher, that lead ace in the hole. Like it just they need one so bad.
Yeah.
But this is the perfect time to get one.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's not the most star-studded free agent class at the top, and we're going to get to that. There's a lot of depth, though. There's a lot of good players. This is probably a group that you're hoping to get an edge two out of if you do sign someone to a big deal. And to be clear, I think Ebiketie has a pretty good shot of becoming like an edge two caliber player, like a 8 to 10 sack sort of player. I don't think he's really ever going to be that, Myles Garrett type of guy. Those guys are rare enough as it is, but I don't really see that as his ceiling, but I do think he's going to be a very good player and certainly worth that second round pick.
Right.
To get that type of edge, you really have to nail a draft pick usually, because they're so expensive when they do hit free agency that they're just ridiculous. And most of the time they don't even hit free agency. You have to trade for them or something like that. So, I don't necessarily think this is the draft class to get that guy either, and we'll definitely talk about that, over time. The Falcons will have maybe a choice of someone like a Myles Murphy or a Tyree Wilson, who I think both are sort of more. Myles Murphy is more of a project than I sort of initially thought from seeing him live and then watching more of his games. He's more inconsistent than I sort of hoped. And then Tyree Wilson, everybody knows he's a project, but the traits are off the charts with Wilson, and then Myles Murphy to a lesser extent. Both guys that I think certainly have the potential to be that sort of top flight edge rusher, but haven't really put it together thus far. Tyree Wilson's production has been better, certainly, but
yeah, you can see the potential with Tyree Wilson, and I think what I believe can easily be the reason why Wilson gets drafted over Murphy is because of the versatility, his ability to play 4 different techniques on a defensive line compared to a guy like Myles Murphy, who you're not even sure can play stand-up edge rusher. Is he more of a hand in the ground type guy? But Wilson, you can move almost everywhere. Honestly, man, I hope fans don't take this and run away with it. But Tyree Wilson brings a little bit of Cam Jordan to the table, right? Just that big, early defensive end that can stand up, that can line up anywhere across the line. He's not necessarily going to be a type of guy that's, known for his speed, but his power and his versatility is what's going to keep him on the field for all 3 downs. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nielsen is looking at that and saying that's my Cam Jordan right there.
Yeah, I do think that you're correct that he will probably go ahead of Myles Murphy because of that ridiculous length that he has. Myles Murphy has good length, don't get me wrong, but Tyree Wilson's like 6'7". So I could see Wilson going to the Seahawks. He just feels like a Seahawks like top pick to me. Like he just kind of screams Seattle. Detroit maybe. I mean, I don't really think Detroit needs any more defensive linemen. They should let the rest of the NFL have some, but maybe, but like
they might get greedy.
Yeah,
they might get greedy.
They could.
The one thing about Murphy though that stood out to me is there was just too many games where he was outplayed by his teammates.
Yeah,
for a guy that's considered a top 10 pick.
Like, he was a 5-star, like one of the top recruits in the country. He's never really put it together, and Clemson's scheme has to be taken into account. It's a very like gap control focused, stop the run first scheme. It doesn't lend itself to a lot of production for the defensive linemen. That's always been a thing. Yeah.
That has translated to the NFL level.
It has. So I don't want to knock him too much for that, but it's something to take into account. I always like guys that have the production at the college level over the guys that don't. But, going off the traits, I think both are certainly top 10 caliber talents, but they make me a little nervous. It's why I've started to mock corner sometimes, to mock offensive tackle sometimes, because you could get the number one of those positions, a blue chip guy, and I'm not necessarily convinced that Murphy or Wilson are blue chip guys. I think they could be with development, but I don't think they're as much of a slam. I mean, nobody's really a slam dunk, but I think like a Christian Gonzalez or Devon Witherspoon is like a safer pick, or like a Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, Skoronski, whatever. Those are all going to make me feel a little bit more comfortable that you're going to nail the pick as opposed to Murphy or Wilson. But there's a lot that goes into it. Knowing this regime, I really doubt they're going to reach on an edge, because I think we could see like 3 go before 8. So at that point, I just don't see them taking an edge, but we'll see. I know Nielsen's going to emphasize the defensive line, but
absolutely.
But that could happen in free agency, right? Which is the topic of the show specifically. And like I said, not necessarily a star-studded group, but I think it's a deep one with a lot of guys that can contribute. That probably Robert Quinn is out there, but I really don't think he's someone you pursue seriously. He's 33, coming off a season where he really didn't even get much playing time with the Eagles, like at all. And that doesn't necessarily mean a lot, right? Because it's the Eagles, but
but it's funny because didn't he, when he got traded, I think he only had like 1 sack with the Bears, right?
And that's all he finished with 1 sack.
Yeah, he finished 1 sack all year, and then didn't really do much in the postseason. So, yeah, I don't know. Is that a drop off, or is that just a weird?
Yeah, and if his price tag comes down to like $5 million, then absolutely, I'll take a flyer on that. But I think his price tag is going to be higher because of his reputation. So I would back off of that. I would want to focus on guys under 30, because I would like someone that you could potentially build around. And the one name that everybody brings up, of course, is Yannick Ngakoue, who had a very good season with the Colts, 9 sacks. More of your 3-4 guy, but we've heard this team talk about how they're going to maintain their sort of hybrid front. And of course, even in New Orleans, they still tended to run a lot of 4-3 under stuff. So you can have that sort of stand-up rusher on one side of your defense. It's not a problem. And I think, Yannick Ngakoue is a good talent, but he's going to be the most expensive option by far. I mean, I think he could push $15 million a year coming off a 9-sack season. But what do you think about someone like Ngakoue? Are you interested in going for that like top of the market option at edge?
I would be. And you mentioned that he played a decent amount of stand-up with Indy. But you got to also keep in mind he's also been to other spots in the league where they did not require him. He was more of a 4-3 traditional guy. You know, he started off with the Jags, and that's where he, started to get his feet wet in the league. And, even in that particular aspect as a 4-3 in there, he was very productive. He was solid. And then a lot of people forget that he had a stint with the Vikings. He had a stint with the Ravens as well. He had a stint with the Raiders. So he's bounced around a little bit and in a weird way. You normally don't see. And it's not like he hasn't been productive.
No, I think like he's had no fewer than 8 sacks in any season. And he's still getting bounced around. It's weird.
Right. He's been in the league for what, 7 years, I want to say.
Yeah.
7 seasons. But yeah, and his worst season is 8 sacks, which is like, so you can say he's automatic for 8 sacks at least. But you don't normally see a guy play for 5 teams in 7 years and is that productive.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that is. I'll be willing to kick 15 million out. It's a position where you gotta nail it in this league. And I think he's as close as you're going to get as someone in the market this year as a guy that can definitely be a reliable edge rusher for this team. Like, I mean, just think about that, Kevin. Like, we would at least know in the back of our mind, Yannick is going to give, if he's healthy, he's going to give us 8 or 9 sacks at least.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that be a luxury for a team?
He'd be like the best Falcons sacker by like 4 sacks last year or something. So
yeah, like this is a team that can't even reach 20 sacks. So having a guy like that's automatically going to give you almost half of that every year. I'm like, I'll be willing to take that, even if it's slightly overpriced by 2 or 3 million maybe.
Yeah. And you got to pay a premium for that top guy, and maybe he even ends up pushing that number when it's all said and done. I mean, who knows? But I do, and it's not like he's been a slouch against the run either. He had 3 missed tackles last year. That's it. That's less than 10% missed tackle rate. That's good. I think he had 8 tackles for loss. He's been a consistent tackles for loss guy too. What is it? 27 pressures, 36 the year before. Man, his rookie season, he had 51 pressures, dude. That is nuts.
Like, that's nuts, man. It's crazy to see a guy with that type of production that's been in so many spots. Yeah,
it's unusual, but I do think his flexibility to stand up or put his hand in the dirt probably appeals to this defense. I think it makes him a fit everywhere, and that could end up driving his price up because a lot of teams will be interested. But I definitely enjoyed watching him. I think he's continued to play well, and he's just 27. He will be 28 for the he'll be 28 for the 2023 season. I think he turns 28 in like a month or two. But that's like, you sign him to a 3-year deal, 4-year deal, and he's going to be 32 at the end of it. He's probably, I mean, you're feeling pretty good that he's still playing at a high level at age 32. So
you're giving 14, 15, maybe 16 million a year to a guy that's in his prime. Like, this is, I'll be willing to do that.
Yeah, and this is not a Dante Fowler situation where he has one good season and then he gets an extension. Like we said, this has been a consistent, productive pass rusher and run defender over his entire career. This is not a one-hit wonder. He's done it on like 5 different teams. I think that gives you a lot of confidence that he can make it work in pretty much any system. He's just a really good player. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I'm certainly interested in him. More so than I thought I would be when I first started looking at him, to be honest. But
he's arguably the cream of the crop
at
the edge spot this offseason. So.
Yeah, and the other big name is Jadeveon Clowney, who's definitely sort of been having some down years. I still expect him to get paid like 10 million plus, which makes me sort of not interested. But he's a great run defender, so he has that probably over an Ngakoue, who's a fine run defender, but probably not as impactful. Clowney's always been known as sort of that really good run defender. But, Clowney is also 30, so I'd probably stay out of the Clowney sweepstakes.
I don't know what Clowney we're going to get at this stage of his career.
Yeah,
So
and it's
I'm
like he
like,
didn't produce on the Browns last year, who had this great defensive line. So I mean, it's
right. You're playing opposite Myles Garrett, and you
Yeah.
still didn't really
still
move
mid.
the needle
Yeah.
a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Some other names in that sort of like next tier, guys like Marcus Davenport, who is coming off a really, really bad year, but I still expect to probably. What do you think he's going to end up getting? Like, I had him penciled in at $8 million, probably on like a 1-year deal, but like, I mean, what do you think? I mean, I could see Nielsen being like, I believe in Davenport. Let's bring him in for a 1-year deal and see what we got. And I don't hate it, but
I can see that too. I can actually see the team bringing him in for like and signing him to like a 3-year deal. Honestly,
wow,
he's not worth it, but somebody's going to give him double digits.
Yeah, I wouldn't be interested in that. Yeah,
somebody will. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of that. Somebody's going to give it to him. I believe his market value was like, I think it was like 12 or 13, I believe, which is, I don't know why you want to give a guy.
No,
like that.
It doesn't make any sense to me because he played in 15 games last year, right? Half sack is all he mustered. 2 tackles for loss. That's it. The year before he had 9 sacks and 9 tackles for loss, and that's pretty good, right?
According to Spot Track, you want to know what his annual market value is right now?
Is it really lower? Why? Like, I don't understand. It's not like he was, I mean, maybe he was hurt, but like he played 15 games, had a half sack. And the best he's ever done is 9 sacks. But the year before, he had 1.5. The year before that, he had 6. And the year before that, he had 4.5. So why is he worth $20 million? He's not coming off a good season.
4 years, $93 million is his market value right now.
I completely would not be interested. I would hang up the phone. I don't know who would give him that money. Like I said, he's coming off a half sack season where he played almost 500 snaps.
And the funny thing about it is his name was brought up a ton with the team at the trade deadline. And I wasn't even certain then, like, why are we bringing his name up? He has not been a productive guy. Like, fans wanted to kick tires on him at the trade deadline.
Yeah. I don't think he's getting anywhere close to 20 million. I would be shocked if he's getting more than 10, to be honest. But
he's not going to get 23. He shouldn't get 23. But the fact that his value is there is shocking enough. And like you mentioned, he shouldn't even get he shouldn't even get 12 million. Like I don't see it, man. Inconsistencies, the injuries, and like you said, this past year was brutal. Like he was a liability on the field at times.
He's never played more than 15 games in a season. 13 games in his rookie year, 13 games his sophomore or second year, 11 games the year after, 11 games the year after that, and he did play 15 this last year. But I mean, I don't know where the value's coming from because he's had one. If this was 2021, I could see the 20 million because he's coming off a 9-sack season, and he'll be like, I don't know, he'll be playing
27.
He'll be 27 right when the season starts. He's young, but if he's anywhere close to that, if he's above 10, like I don't see anyone giving him a multi-year contract. I think maybe someone gives him 8, 10, 12 million 1-year prove it deal type money. But coming off a half sack season with 2 tackles for loss to your name and like 10 pressures, like I just don't see NFL teams lining up.
How many games?
Yeah. 15 with 9 starts. He had almost 500 snaps, a half sack, 14 pressures, and 2 tackles for loss.
That's opposite of Cam Jordan.
That's like Ogundeji numbers. I'm not paying no offense to Ogun. Well, maybe a little bit of offense. Sorry, Ogundeji. I don't mean to dunk on you, but like I'm not paying Ogundeji $20 million a year. So why is he valued? I think Spotrack's numbers are messed up, man. I don't understand. I just don't get it.
I'm not paying him 10 years. Now, if the staff wants to convince me, hey, we'll give him a 2-year deal worth, I don't know, $8 million a year. and we make that second year a voided year with some incentives sprinkled in, you gotta play 15, you gotta play at least 15 games. You gotta have at least double-digit starts. You gotta see at least X amount of snaps. Then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll be all right with that. I'll be all right with that, because you're still making him prove himself in the league, even at this age, at 27. You're still saying, hey, you still got a ways to go, and you need to prove yourself, and the money is going to be aligned for you if you're able to approve it. If you're able to prove yourself. So
yeah,
I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, I think if they were to do like a what, like maybe Nielsen could convince him to come here on a cheaper 1-year deal to rehabilitate his value, because I think if he was a free agent last year, he might have been getting $20 million a year, but coming off this year, I just can't believe it. So he may be looking for a place where he can go and blow up and then get that paycheck again. And I think it would behoove him to sign a 1-year prove it deal. But yeah, we'll see. That it's just he's such a risky proposition. I don't want to get in any. If it's above 10 million, I am all the way out on that. But
I will be honest with you. I'll be honest with you, Kevin. Part of me really feels like he'll be a Falcon.
He might be, but I as long as it's not huge money,
I just
multiple
feel
years, yeah.
I feel like Nielsen is going to say, bring him in. I can develop him. I can polish him. I can make him into a guy. And I see the team signing him this offseason, honestly.
I also wonder if Nielsen might know, like, oh, this guy did not pan out. I'm going to stay away, because he has more information than anybody else. So it's actually the opposite. Yeah.
That way, if the team doesn't even talk to him, then yes, that will probably be the case. Nielsen is like, no. He's
Nielsen's like, actually, I know this is not going to work. Like, I know more than anyone else. I'm staying away. Like,
yeah, that would say a lot.
Yeah, it would. Some other names I got for edge. Let's see. Pull up my list here. Samson Ebukam from the 49ers. Really, really good run defender. Had a nice year as a pass rusher, too. Arden Key from the Jaguars has been a popular name. Another 49er, Charles Omenihu, somebody I really liked coming out of the draft. Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, sort of an underrated guy from the Texans. I think he had like over 5 sacks with the Texans, which is a disaster team. If you can produce on a bad defensive line, I like you. And then Kyle Granderson from the Saints, who thoroughly outplayed Marcus Davenport. Let's see, he had almost the same amount of snaps. Carl Granderson had 5.5 sacks and 9 tackles for loss, along with the same amount of pressures overall and 1 missed tackle. I would much rather get Carl Granderson, Eric, for what is probably going to be $4 or $5 million a year than Marcus Davenport or whatever crazy number Spotrack's putting out there. But any of those guys that you're interested in? Yeah, go ahead.
Arden Key for sure. Arden Key intrigues me a lot. But I also feel like they may look at that and say, hey, we got an Arden Key and Malone.
They kind of have 2 of that guy right now.
Right, 2 of that type of guy. One guy that comes to mind, Dwayne Smoot from Jacksonville. They wanted to go a cheaper route, get a veteran guy in. He's had 5 sacks over the last 4 years, at least 5 sacks over the last 4 years. He's 27. He didn't start a game this year, but in 15 games, 5 sacks. He had a season in the injury, of course. But he 6 sacks in 2021, and he also had 6 sacks in 2019. And I think he really brings solid size, 6'3", 270. That's a guy I would kick the tires on and give him maybe $6-7 million a year and say, hey, come on in and add to this rotation here. That's a guy that comes to mind for me.
Yeah. No, that's a good one as well. Dwayne Smoot for sure. I find myself more interested in these, like if it either Ngakoue or maybe like some of these other guys, like I think Omenihu or Okoronkwo or Granderson or Key or, Smoot. Like I like the idea of adding another just good rotational guy in there.
Would you be disappointed if they walked away this offseason without adding one there?
I think they need to add somebody, but it could be the draft also. Like if they re-sign Lorenzo Carter and then they draft an edge, that's already like 4 guys that you're like, because you've already got, that's like almost 5 guys that are already guys that you probably want to keep, right? Because you've got your 3 drafted guys in Ebiketie, Malone, and Ogundeji, and then you've got Carter plus the guy you just drafted. So that's already 5 guys. So, you know, at that point, like, it's not like you need to necessarily add somebody else in free agency, but I'd probably rather that they add somebody in free agency and jettison Ogundeji personally. But maybe I'm just an Ogundeji hater. I don't know. But I mean, and he could still get better. He's only played 2 years. I mean, it's not, you know, like his story is completely written either. But
given the need and given the fact that they have money this offseason, I would be slightly disappointed if they didn't sign a veteran edge rusher. I just feel like there's so much youth already in the locker room. And you need a guy that's been around the block 5, 6, 7 years or whatever. He's been productive enough, and you're bringing him in and you're letting him add to the nucleus. If fans follow me on Twitter or whatever, I'm tired of the youth movement. Let's be honest. Like, I'm tired. Like, we've done the youth movement for so long. Let's get some guys that's been around the block, man. That sacked a few quarterbacks in the league. That's my thing.
You need a veteran presence, no matter what. Like, you need at least one veteran in every position group, I think. Yeah.
At least one. It doesn't have to be Yannick, but at least one.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I like that idea. Moving on to the interior defensive line, I think this is one of, if not the strongest free agent group in all of free agency. Like, the interior defensive line group is just absolutely stacked with guys. I mean, Javon Hargrave, Dalvin Tomlinson, Daron Payne, David Onyemata, Larry Ogunjobi, you know, Ashawn Robinson, Poona Ford, Jordan Phillips, Sheldon Rankins.
How much are you giving Payne?
I'm probably not getting involved with the Daron Payne sweepstakes, to be honest with you.
You're not?
Yes, because I think the price will be over $20 million, and I think the difference between Daron Payne and, like, David Onyemata is not worth the $10 million difference in what they're going to get paid. Now, Daron Payne is better and a little bit younger, but what if it's 16? 16 million? I mean, I would be interested in that at that price. Yeah, for sure. I would sign him at that price, no question. But I think it's going to be 20 plus because Washington wants to keep him. So that's already going to raise the price. Other teams, I mean, he's the top defensive line free agent on the market. So I think just not getting involved is probably the best option, although I do love the idea of him coming to Atlanta. I mean, he played like almost 90% of the snaps, which is just ridiculous for an interior player. But like, I think you could get David Onyemata and Dalvin Tomlinson for the same price as Daron Payne. And I'd probably rather go that route just because it also protects you a little bit more from injury. Like, if Payne gets hurt, then you're just screwed. Whereas, like, if you could sign 2 guys, it's like, oh, maybe you still have help, you know, if one of them gets hurt. So
I do love the intrigue of having him and Grady Jarrett on the same line together. Yeah. Like, that would be absolutely beautiful. Everyone knows the quickest way to the quarterback is the interiors over the center. Mm-hmm. And to have those 2 guys push in the pocket, that would be absolutely beautiful. I would be I think 16 is the ceiling for me.
Yeah, I think he's going to get 20. Yeah.
He's probably going to get close to 20, or at least he's going to ask for 20.
Yeah, he should.
He should, right?
Yeah,
but yeah, I would pass on that. But again, you mentioned Onyemata, another New Orleans guy that has so much familiarity with Ryan Nielsen, and that's a guy I would definitely want to add to the locker room. He was underrated in New Orleans because the D line is so deep, but he was a guy, you know, that was a constant force on the interior, and he played off a lot of the guys quite well.
Yeah.
He's knocking on 30, right? I think he's like 29 or something like that.
David Onyemata is going to be 31 in the 2023
he's
season. So he's a 2 to 3 year guy. But the interior guys tend to last longer. So that helps. And it's not like he's 34 or something, but yeah, that's right. And that's part of why he'll be cheaper too. I think with the Nielsen connection and the Fontenot connection, I think the Falcons should be a favorite for acquiring him and, Shy Tuttle too. Like, I mean, I think both of those guys are guys I'd like to add. Both won't be prohibitively expensive. Onyemata's probably going to be asking for close to 10. Shy Tuttle, just a few million, maybe 3. I think those two would help a lot. But if that's just scratching the surface, I mean, there's so many guys like, Larry Ogunjobi, Zach Allen is a guy that I'm really interested in.
I wanted them to. Me too. I really wanted to bring in Ogunjobi last offseason after he had that failed physical. He was going to be cheap, and the Steelers brought him in on like a 1-year deal for like $5 million. And I'm like, man, the Falcons have that. I don't see why. What about Draymond Jones from Denver?
I love Draymond Jones. I think he's going to be one of the top guys on the market too. I would certainly be interested. Okay. He'll be cheaper than Daron Payne. He'll probably be like closer to that 10 to 15 number. But I mean, I would be interested for sure.
But he's also had I think he's had like 5.5 sacks for each of the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So he's been a productive guy in Denver. I think he'd be a lot cheaper as well. I would not mind bringing him in as well. I would consider giving him roughly 9-10 a year maybe.
Yeah.
And see if he wants to come in and add to this interior.
Yeah. And there's just so many guys. Like, it goes down from the top guys. We mentioned a bunch of them already, right? But like, Javon Hargrave is another one that's going to be in the mix. He's going to be 30 this year, but still an excellent player. We mentioned Dalvin Tomlinson, Ogunjobi. Poona Ford of the Seahawks is another really good player. I've always been a big fan of A'Shawn Robinson as a guy. Sheldon Rankins. A'Shawn, not necessarily the flashiest pass rusher, but I think he's like legitimately one of the best run defending defensive linemen in the NFL. I mean, he's just so good in that area. And you mentioned Sheldon Rankins, Jordan Phillips. They're looking for a nose.
Phillips was another guy I was thinking of. Yep.
Yeah.
He's another guy. Jaron. Green Bay. This is a great year to need an interior defensive lineman.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just find one.
Yeah, and that's why I think they come away with 2 guys from the. And this is why I tell people to back off of wanting the Falcons to draft defensive tackles, because I think they're gonna sign 2. And when you've already got Grady and you've already got Taquan Graham, who you like, there's only room for maybe one more guy. And I think that they should still draft a defensive tackle, but people are like, oh, they should draft 3 defensive linemen. It's like, there's not room on the roster for that many guys if they add people in free agency. So calm down with wanting them to draft 15 defensive linemen. They're going to draft maybe 1 edge and 1 interior guy, and that's fine.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But I mean, but even if you go down to the depth, there's just interesting guys up and down. John Kaminsky had a tremendous season with the Lions, right? Right after we cut him, just had an awesome season. He's probably never coming back here because we wronged him, but I personally believe they're gonna. I do think I can see the team going to get 2 interior guys, but I think it's going to be 1 drafted, 1 free agent guy, just to create that 2 deep depth there with Taquan Graham and Jared already in place. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if they, like I said, get a guy like Draymond Jones and then, go after a guy like Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin on late in day 2. I would definitely, I would be surprised there. I love Benton too, man. Benton is a horse. He was so fun at the Senior Bowl. He was definitely one of the more fun guys to watch there. I liked if they want to wait, Gerard Clark from Coastal Carolina too was a guy I had watched it all prior to Senior Bowl, and he was a light, not light, like he's actually heavier than, you know, Keanu Benton, but like a cheaper version, we'll say, of Benton. Not as high ceiling as a pass rusher, but another really strong. He batted down like 3 passes. I mean, you could just tell the guy has a feel for that aspect of the game, which is underrated, honestly, in my opinion. Like, because a nose tackle, a lot of times you're going to get stonewalled in your pass rush. It happens. Like, you're not the fastest guy. You're big. You're two-gapping, whatever. You're going to get 2 guys on you. You can't get to the quarterback. What can you do? You put your hand up. And he batted down like 3 passes at the Senior Bowl. Underrated aspect of an interior guy is to just impact the throwing lane, and I like that from him. But as you guys can see, like, interior defensive line, they could go in so many different directions. I think they signed 2 guys from this group. I think one is potentially going to be a high-end guy. One is more of that, like, good starter, rotational player type guy, like a Shy Tuttle or a, you know, Jordan Phillips type of guy. Not like your 15 million sort of player, but another just good interior guy. And then I think if they add a draft pick to that, you're probably pretty satisfied because, look, they do have Taquan Graham. They do have Grady Jarrett. They have Abdullah Anderson, who I think is fine as like the first guy off the bench, you know, second guy off the bench type of guy. Like, I mean, he's a good depth player.
Timmy Horn,
you know, maybe Timmy Horn turns into something. I think he's someone you'd rather have on your practice squad for another year, probably. But like, you know, maybe Ryan Nielsen comes in and coaches him up to be great, you know, whatever. But I think this is where I would sign multiple guys, and the depth of the class is going to reduce the price of especially the depth guys. Whereas like at the edge group, where it's not as deep, you're going to see guys get more money than they probably should. With the defensive tackle group, you're going to see the top guys getting big money, of course. But the depth guys might get their value pushed down because there's so many good players, teams are going to scoop them up, and then there's going to be a lot of guys left that are going to have to take less money. It's the way the business works some years, but the Falcons can be beneficiaries because they can afford to give some of these depth players a little bit more money than other teams might be willing to offer them because they have so much space. So they could be like, oh, Shy Tuttle's getting offers, you know, for $2 million from a bunch of teams. So the Falcons could say, we'll give you 3. We'll give you 3 for 2. We'll give you $6 million over 2 years to come here because we have the extra money and you've got the connection. And that could be the way they could close the deal on some of those guys. So I definitely like this. That's probably my favorite group of all the free agent groups so far that I've looked at. And I think they can really improve that group with a couple of guys there and a draft pick. And I think it's probably going to be more like they're not going to draft a D tackle at 8. I can tell you that right now because Brian Brzee is not a top 10 pick. I don't know who needs to hear that, but I know he was getting mocked there early.
Why is he not to you?
The production's not good enough. And I mean, traits wise, sure, but there's just too many players that are better. Like I've heard buzz that he might fall to like the late 20s. I mean, the production was just not there. But we all know, like, if you've followed Brzee's story, like he's dealt with a lot, right? Like off-field stuff, not like bad. Like, I mean, he didn't do anything wrong. Like it's, you know, I think his sister died unexpectedly. Like all this stuff happened this year, and that obviously is going to play into it. So you don't want to ding him too much for that, but it raises. He's never been a super productive player. He's never really hit on that 5-star potential. I'm not, in top 10.
He's going to be more of a guy that's drafted based on traits.
Yes.
You know, for a guy that's 6'5", 305, 310, the way he moves
it's
so
ridiculous.
fluidly, it's nuts. You can't teach that. He has it. I can see him go top 10, especially if it's a situation where, like you mentioned earlier, 3 edges going to top 8 or something like that.
I could see Seattle take him. Yeah.
I can see Seattle taking him. I can see the Raiders taking him. I can see the Lions taking him to add next to Aiden Hutchinson because they have 2 first-rounders. They may look at it and say, hey, let's just throw some at the wall and see if it stick. Honestly, I can see the Panthers taking a swing at him as well. Just to have him next to Derek Brown and create that nucleus going forward with him, Derek Brown, and Brian Burns. I can see that happening as well, especially if they lose Ioannidis in free agency this offseason. So Yeah, I think I agree with you. The production for Brissy was not there. It's going to be traits.
And he gets washed against the run. But again, like, it's easier to coach up the run. You know, it's easier to coach up the run defending, to be fair. But yeah, he got annihilated against the run. It was embarrassing at times. But you're not drafting a defensive tackle in the top 8 to stop the run. Okay, like.
But he's probably going to look good in the underwear Olympics.
Oh yeah, he's going to crush the combine. Yeah, for sure.
He's probably going to.
Yeah, but not for me. Not at 8, but definitely a first round talent. I just would. He's a guy that I think you take in the 20s and you're probably pretty happy and you feel good about it. But if you take him before that, I think it's really risky. And yeah, I guys, yes, the Panthers are probably going to take a quarterback. But at this point, we don't know if they are going to. If they sign somebody, then they're not going to take a quarterback. But like, I think they're gonna take a quarterback. Yes, you're right. They're gonna take a quarterback. But like, we don't know. You know, until they officially don't sign a quarterback in free agency. We don't know that for sure.
I don't know if that's
they're taking a quarterback. They're taking a quarterback, Eric. It's gonna happen. They've boxed themselves into this corner by refusing to do it. You know, for the past like 5 years. So they've made this bed. Yeah.
So you guys foresee? I guess fans foresee the team taking a guy like Anthony Richardson and saying, "Hey, let's go forward with it." Like there's no.
Or they trade up aggressively. I think that's also in the cards. But they're going to have to compete with the Colts too. So I mean, it's a mess. Like, it's a mess. But
there's teams ahead of them that can trade up and offer better value. And the team that like the Bears will have to drop all the way down to the bottom half of the top 10.
It's going to be, this is what's going to happen, Eric. Okay. I've got it all planned out. You see, I have my machinations already ready to go. So the Colts are going to trade up to 1 with the Bears and take. Really? I think the Raiders are going to sign Jimmy Garoppolo. That team screams Jimmy Garoppolo.
I think it's either going to be Jimmy, or they're going to say, "Let's balls to the wall. Let's go get him. Let's go get Bryce Young." They're going to be aggressive somehow, some way at quarterback, because I really think they wanted to take a swing at Tom Brady this offseason.
I'm sure they did. That does make sense to me also. But the Bears don't want to drop out of the top 4 because they want Jalen Carter or Will Anderson. So the lowest they will go is 4. The best value they can get is by going to 4. I think they're fine with either one of those guys, like anyone should be. So I think the Bears go to 4 with the Colts. The Bears, or I don't know, the Colts probably take Will Levis because he just screams Colts to me. But you know, you don't have to lecture me on Will Levis, Eric. I'm right there with you. But
trading up from 4 to 1 for
yes. Doesn't that just scream Colts to you? It does to me. Now, I could be wrong about that, but they're going to trade up to 1. I know that. Then the Texans are going to take the actual best quarterback in the draft in Bryce Young. And then I think if another team is aggressive, they'll probably trade to 3 with the Cardinals to get their quarterback, whether that's CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, whatever. So I could see the Panthers going up to 3 or to like 5. But ultimately, I think the Panthers are going to say, we're going to take whoever falls to us at 9. And they're probably going to be, that's not the best idea, right? But also they don't have a lot of draft capital to trade either. So like, you know,
that's what I'm saying. I can't see that with a team that already they invested so much in Darnold. Remember, they took a guy like Matt Corral last year. Granted, this coaching staff did not draft him.
Yes.
You still have PJ Walker lingering around there. I don't, and you bring in a guy like Frank Reich, who and you have a staff. That staff is starting to look pretty damn good. Let me be honest.
Yes.
And you're bringing in guys like Jim Caldwell, Deuce Staley on your staff. I can't see them say. I can't see Dave Tepper. Dave Tepper wants to win now.
That's exactly why they're going to trade up for a quarterback.
I can't see them saying, "Let's draft Anthony Richardson and let's go win now." This roster is a win now roster. It's not a.
You have to understand, you know. You've watched this Panthers team the past several years and how they've flopped and flipped and just failed at quarterback. What makes you think they're not going to do the exact same thing this year? Because nothing has changed except the coaching staff, and clearly the coaching staff doesn't have any control over the quarterback situation. So
you got to look at Frank Reich's career, man.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Look at when point out a time where he was actually on board with drafting and developing a quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Yeah.
His time in Indy, they bought in Phillip Rivers, they bought in Carson Wentz, they bought in Matt Ryan. You think he's gonna change that style now because he's in Carolina and he's gonna change it for a guy like Anthony Richardson that's like 2 years away? I that's why I don't think it's a guarantee the Panthers go quarterback.
I don't disagree with you, but like I think that they're gonna get like that GM that they like everything you've said is correct. Like, don't get me wrong, but Fitterer and the owner want the young quarterback. They've tried and failed twice now to get the veteran quarterback. Yeah. Now they're going to be like, no, that route doesn't work. Even though the strategy wasn't bad, it was the guy they went after that was bad. But they're going to be like, no, the veteran route doesn't work. We're getting a rookie, and we don't care what we have to pay for it. And they're going to get a rookie, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But like, that's sort of what I foresee happening just because. But unless they get Derek Carr, like they win the Derek Carr sweepstakes. But, we'll see. But yeah. All right, we're going to get to linebacker real quick before we wrap up, guys. I did want to get to Mad Tom K's questions here. He had 2 donations for a total of $6, and the second one was just adding another name in there for his first question. But it was, okay, you can sign only one of these 4 players. Safety, Jesse Bates. Defensive tackle, Javon Hargrave. Defensive tackle, Daron Payne. Or edge rusher, Yannick Ngakoue. Who would you pick, Eric, and why?
Oh.
That's a tough one. You have to take now. I imagine you take the projected contract into account as well. I'm gonna axe Hargrave right off the bat for me because of the age. Hargrave is gonna be 30, so
yeah.
I would nothing against Hargrave. He's playing at a great level, but like I would already lean to getting one of the younger guys just off of.
I would say Yannick. The reason why I would say Yannick is arguably the biggest need on the team. B, when it comes to Jesse Bates, while Jesse Bates is the best free safety option this offseason, I'm not sure. Me personally, I don't know how you see it, but me personally, I think bringing in a guy like Nielsen may do away with the single high free safety. Is going to do away with it, and I think that's his bread and butter. That's where he thrives in, as that single high free safety that's able to just patrol on the back end. And I think you're going to see a whole lot more 2 safety looks, which means I feel like guys like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a better value.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I think when Dean Pease retired, it threw a little bit of water on Jesse Bates because getting that interchangeable safety like Bates was really important for Dean Pease defense, I felt. And with Nielsen, they're going to play more traditional cover 2, and they're going to play more. They're still going to play single high, but the safeties don't switch around as much. So like you can get more of a pure free safety and a pure box safety in that Nielsen defense, like a Marcus Williams and a, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson sort of thing. So I still like the idea of Jesse Bates coming in here, but I do think it got a little bit less likely with the change in defensive scheme. But again, we don't know if Nielsen wants to do exactly what Dennis Allen did or if he wants to do his own thing. I mean, it could be very different. I don't suspect it'll be super different, but it could be somewhat different. So
it could be. So I'll say Yannick, and a lot of it is based on what I said earlier about how I really want this team to bring in a solid veteran piece at edge rusher to help that. Like, to me, that would help develop Ebiketie and Malone long term. Like if you're going into the 2023 season and Miles Murphy was drafted, and you're going into the season with Murphy, Ebiketie, and Malone as your top 3 edge rushing rotation, I'm going to be nervous. I feel much better. I'm able to sleep much better at night if I have Yannick in that group compared to just going heavy, drafting high and taking a guy and saying, all right, let's work with this.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. No, yeah. I think I also lean Yannick because I think the price tag will be more reasonable too. Like it'll probably be closer to 15 instead of like over 20 for everybody else on that list. So I
I think
agree with.
Bates is
I think Bates is getting 20 just because he's just by far the best safety on the market. But and safeties have started to get paid. So I think in a defense like Dean Pease, where the safety is just so important, I could have justified paying that price. I just don't. With Nielsen, I don't know if he values the safety to that extent. So we'll see. But
what's interesting to me, I think Gardner Johnson can bring some of that Tyrann Mathieu value where you can just take him and put him in certain spots. And to me, that's the better investment than paying Jesse Bates $20 million a year.
yeah,
I rather give Gardner Johnson $12 million a year and let him be my free safety / strong safety / at times nickel roll. I rather he be that guy.
yeah. No, that makes sense to me. That makes perfect sense. Linebacker we'll touch on real quick. Not as exciting in terms of the free agent class, but there are definitely some guys out there. There was a report that the Falcons and Rashaan Evans were interested in re-signing, like both sides. So I think Rashaan Evans makes a lot of sense to just bring him back as your veteran sort of starter. But we all know he's limited in coverage with what he can do there. Pretty much all, Leighton Vander Esch at the Cowboys had a big bounce back year. He could be someone that's interesting. Levante David, will the Bucs re-sign him? Obviously, he's 33, so you're not getting a ton more years out of him, but obviously
David
great
Long
player. Yep. Tennessee.
David Long from Tennessee. Everyone is pretty much familiar with the name Caden Ellis at this point. Another guy from New Orleans that can definitely create a Saints to Falcons pipeline this offseason. So keep your eyes open for him. Outside of that, it's not really much to drive home here when it comes to this linebacker group.
Yeah, I mean like Quincy Williams. Yeah, Quincy Williams of the Jets. I like Drew Tranquill. I like, but
are they significantly better than Rashaan Evans?
Yes, but I think yes, but they're significantly better than Michael Walker. I think they're better than Rashaan Evans. Significantly better than Michael Walker. But it's more like I'd rather have Rashaan Evans as sort of like the third linebacker, the like maybe your base package guy that comes in if you're going to play more 4-3 sets, like traditional 4-3 sets. And then I'd rather have an upgrade in coverage for the other spot, but they could also draft someone too. I don't know that they have to spend big money here. They could go for more of like a depthy veteran here, but we'll see. But there's definitely names out there, and off-ball linebackers, just other than the top guys, they just don't make a ton. Tremaine Edmonds at the Bills, another guy. So they don't get huge money. So you can get a decent guy out there. Yeah.
He's going to get paid.
Oh yeah, some of these guys will, but not all of them. Most of them won't. So just off-ball linebackers, they just tend to not get paid. They just really don't, except for the top guys. So you can, if you're patient, you can sort of see who falls through the cracks, pick up some guys, and I think you could be pretty happy with who shakes free. But I don't think this is a spot where they go out and spend premium money, because they got Troy Anderson. I think they're going to re-sign Rashaan Evans. They're probably going to draft someone on day 3. Deion Jones. Yeah, we're not having that conversation. He would never come back here, even if they offered him big money. But and Nico,
I think they throughout the All-Star draft process of Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, I think we saw enough to see that the team had interest in guys in the draft as well at the linebacker spots. I know one name that came to mind is Jeremy Banks out of Tennessee. Was a guy that impressed the coaching staff at the Shrine Bowl. So if it's not a situation where they need to draft high, but I think there's enough day 3 guys that's going to intrigue them enough to say, hey, let's re-sign Rashaan and get one of these guys here on day 3 and let that be our linebacker core going forward, along with Michael Walker as well. I can't see them spending a ton of money at linebacker this offseason.
No, I think they may sign another veteran $2 to $3 million a year guy, but I don't think it's gonna be big money. They may just sort of
Caden
see.
Ellis.
Yeah,
That sounds like
that.
it. Caden. Yeah.
Yeah.
Resign Rashawn Evans, bring in Caden Ellis, and say, all right, let's call it a day.
Yeah, and we'll see if Michael Walker finds more favor with this coaching staff, but he's someone that could be a cap casualty if he doesn't, like, they're not going to cut him like before training camp or anything, but like if he's not cracking the big rotation, they may move on and save, like, I think it's
on the bubble during preseason.
I think he could be. Now, that was assuming Dean Pease, though. He clearly was not favored by Dean Pease at all, but you know, it could change with Ryan Nielsen, and they do save $2.7 million if they move on before week 1. So, you know, if he's not going to be a primary rotational player, they may just move on. So we'll see. But you know, a couple guys are like that where they could potentially save some cash by moving on. You know, Jalen Hawkins, Matt Hennessy. Not that I think that they will necessarily move on from any of those guys, but it could be a consideration if they're not cracking any significant role. So.
Yeah, I think there's definitely gonna be a number of cuts this offseason.
They're also, you know, especially on defense where they're really changing. So,
especially on defense.
Yeah, but okay, we got one final question before we wrap up here. It's for Eric. He wants to know some pointed ESPN questions here from Jason Gates. Thank you, Jason. He says, have you ever gotten to see Marcus Spears upset about the Cowboys after their disappointing playoff losses? And have you ever had a chance to ask Dan Orlovsky about running out of the end zone for a safety?
Yes, I've seen Spears get upset up close and personal. I've been in studio as he's, you know, just as he's venting about the Cowboys. Absolutely. The Orlovsky thing, me personally, I've never asked him of that, simply because he gets enough of it from the NFL Live crew as it is. But yeah, he's a good sport about it, man. Like he's not one of those guys that's like, don't ask me anything about that. Like he will, if you make a decent enough joke about it, he'll laugh along with you as well. But the crew, like Spears and Ryan Clark and Mina, they give him enough stuff already about running out of back of the end zone. So everyone else is kind of sort of lays off from it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Yeah. That makes me feel that I don't feel like you have to rub it in then if he's a good sport about it. So
no. He's a good sport. Yeah, he makes jokes about it himself. So
that's great. Yeah. Well, Eric, it's been a great show. We covered a lot of ground with the front seven tonight. Guys, he is Eric Robinson at _Eric_Robinson. Eric, anything you'd like to plug before we sign off tonight?
Man, I'm plugging the Falcoholic as always, man. I'm not there no longer, of course, but that is a absolute one-stop shop for any and everything Falcons. You know, I know for sure Kevin is going to be cranking out his scouting reports this offseason, so please be on the lookout for those. Very good insight, very good dialogue from Kevin. He watches plenty of tape. He doesn't just watch YouTube highlight videos. the guy really does break down tape very well. So be on the lookout for that. Falcoholic.com. That's where you need to be.
Absolutely. I echo that 100%, especially the parts about me. But, but we appreciate you coming on as always, Eric. We'll definitely get you on plenty.
Coming out soon?
I have one come out on Monday. So you can hit that up on the Falcoholic.com. See, perfect. You know, see, this is why we know you're in the biz. You just really teed it up for me there. So, but yeah, Nico, no, we're still figuring out what to do with the podcast, whether we'll have to change the name or not. You know, we'll see. But either way, it'll be fine. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll keep you guys in the loop. Don't worry about it. But yeah, guys, I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Like Eric said, check out everything on thefalcoholic.com, everything you need. Give us that like, give us that subscribe, hit the bell or whatever for the notifications if you want to know when we're going live. Yeah, Eric knows. Yep. And then if you're listening to the podcast audio, leave us that 5-star review. That will port over if we change podcast names because we do get to keep the feed. So that's nice at least. Yeah, we will keep you guys posted all throughout the off season as we continue to drill down on the draft, on free agency. And we're just a couple weeks away from the combine now, and then the free agency will be the week after that, and then we'll be just a little over a month away from the draft itself. So we are ramping up everything. So, guys, thank you so much.
That, Kevin? It's draft season.
I can smell it.
It's no draft season. It's the best. It's the best of the year.
It's the best time of year. It's beautiful.
Scouting reports, and film sessions,
Yep.
and mock drafts.
Oh yeah,
God.
love it. Love it. If I had a nickel for every comment that was like, "Oh, there's no way this mock draft's going to be accurate," I'd probably have $10 by now.
We both would have some money in our pocket.
I could go I can go get a fast food. I could go get some Chipotle with that money at this point. So
why would you do that? Why would you do that to your stomach, man? Like that's
the comments make me sick, and then the Chipotle makes me sick. So I feel like it's fair right now. No, I love your comments, guys. Keep them coming. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Live. Stay tuned. We'll be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. as always for the next episode. Until then, guys, have a great night. We'll see you next time.